There were 647 mass shootings in the U.S. in 2022, and they defined mass shootings by 4 more people shot and or killed in a single incident at the same general time or location, not including the shooter. There were 18 separate major weather-related natural disasters in 2022, totaling billions of dollars in damages. And obviously by weather-related natural disasters, we're talking tornadoes, flooding, severe weather, hurricanes. Total food prices increased 9.9% in 2022. And breaking that down, at-home foods increased 11.4%, while eating out costs increased 7.7%. A single home fire occurred every 89 seconds in 2022. And then finally, only 30% of Americans have a long-term financial plan that includes savings and investments. 56% of American households live paycheck to paycheck, and only 39% of Americans have enough savings to cover a $1,000 emergency. Now, why in the world, Tyler, would I want to start this podcast off with that bad juju? Tell me.
I don't know, Ben.
Why would I want to do that?
I don't know, Ben. Just a negative guy that likes talking about negative things.
What's a common theme amongst those statistics?
There's a lot of things that can happen, and the frequency of those events are only increasing, or at least our awareness of those events.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The common theme there is lots of things are happening. And for the most part, although you can't control every aspect of it, you can certainly control your reaction to it. You can control how prepared you are for it. Yep. You can control the foresight that you have, the planning that you undergo. You can control how you think about problems before they happen. And I'm sitting here preaching to myself today, maybe more so than any other episode we've ever done, because if any one of these things happened, maybe potentially besides the last one, I would be severely underprepared. Because in my mind, it won't happen to me. I'm good. We're safe. I'm not in a situation where there's going to be a mass shooting. I'm not in a situation where, I have to worry about food increases or decreases. It's not really that big of a deal to me. House fires, that's for other people. That's not really going to happen to me. And so when I look at statistics like this, it's sobering to think how unprepared I am and how much of a disservice I'm doing to my family and my community by being so unprepared.
And that's it. It's one thing if it was just you. It'd be one thing if it was just me. There's and I mean, we can even just walk through these. You started this episode off talking about mass shootings. There's so much division on gun rights, gun laws, and the Second Amendment and what that means. The reality, in my opinion, growing up in California, that's very anti-gun, and then moving to Texas, who's pro-Second Amendment, very much so. The reality is these mass shootings, regardless of gun reform or regardless of gun laws, are happening everywhere. They're happening in Chicago, where it's very difficult to purchase a handgun. Happening in California, very strict gun laws. They're happening in Texas, very loose gun laws. Doesn't matter. The frequency of these are happening. Now, we could spend a lot of time talking about why.
Which is ultimately going to do nothing.
It's going to do nothing. I mean, what it does come down to is the decay in mental health. Because the willingness to not only go take other lives, but then take your own life as well. That is a mental health challenge. And so we can talk all day about how to prevent these and how to do these, but one thing that I will say, and let's just use school shootings, for example. School districts are now training teachers. In Texas, there's actually a bill in legislation right now, going through the process, that the state would increase teacher salary by $28,000 annually if they carry a gun to school. Now, that's not just, hey, carry a gun, you get 28 grand. You have to go through constant gun training. You have to go through constant mental evaluations. And there's one other requirement that you have to go through in order to get this, and background checks or something like that. But there has to be preparedness, because in the case of a school shooting, Uvalde, huge screw up by the police department. Doesn't matter if they're there within 2 minutes or they're there within 12 minutes. Casualties can happen. So people that are boots on the ground, how well prepared are you to mitigate the damage done by a shooter? So how prepared are you? Are you prepared and trained and comfortable shooting a firearm? My wife and I never owned a gun, and I was very much the guy that was like, I don't need a gun. I mean, nobody's going to come into my house and overtake me. Nobody. I'm 250. It's like, no. And my wife was always like, her dad had one and growing up, and so she was always comfortable. I was not. My dad never had a gun. There was never a gun in my house. So why? Well, we 7 years ago bought our first firearm. I got one and my wife got one, and it was absolutely imperative to us that we went through training and we felt comfortable, because you're not much help if you're not prepared enough to be able to know how to use it when the time comes.
Yeah, just having the gun does
nothing. You can hurt more than you can help, and so that's one thing that's really important. And again, just in everyday life, like, how prepared are you? And you guys are going to hear from a police officer that's going to come in and talk through how, in public, things to look for, things to be cautious of, ways to prepare. Like if you're leaving work late at night, things to make sure, okay, when you're going to your car, how to prepare for it. Really cool stuff that's like real life scenario every day. Like you said, we never think it can happen to us. Never think that we can get mugged on the street. Never think that we're going to get, robbed at gunpoint. Never think that someone's going to break into our house. Never think that there's going to be a shooting at our church like Fort Worth a few years back. But like, there's an instance right there. There were people that were prepared. A guy came into the church with a gun and he was taken out immediately. But again, people forget that, right?
Yeah, and whether you're going to listen to this series and take the step of, I'm going to go get prepared with a handgun or a gun in general, that's up to you. That's your choice, whether you're comfortable doing that or not.
And it would encourage you to think differently about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, think again about exactly how and why you think that you need to do it.
Yeah.
But again, this whole series is not just, okay, hey, mass shootings. This isn't like, we're not saying like preparedness like Red Dawn, right? Where form a group of high schoolers and form a group called the Wolverines and go overtake. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying build a bunker in your backyard. If you want to, great. Me personally, I would love to do that. And there's things that you can do, and we've actually got a group that you'll hear from that do like shelters, like really attainable shelters, and you get to actually come in and see in my home what we did with them, and it was really cool. But we're not saying that. We're just saying everyday tragedies that happen, if for some unfortunate, unforeseen reason you are involved in it, is how can you mitigate the damages from that event as much as possible? And you can't eliminate everything, because that's life.
Yeah, but you can have a plan in place. You can rehearse that plan, and you can be as prepared as possible. So for me, the gun scenario, it's probably a good idea. I've never owned a gun. I'm uncomfortable around guns, to be honest with you, just because of the lack of knowledge. Never grew up shooting guns. Still don't to this day. Still don't own a gun. So realistically, maybe I should, but I probably won't own a gun after this series. And maybe this is the catalyst that I need to go do that. So for me, I don't think of, all right, I need to go get a gun. I need to learn how to use it. For me, I think about, okay, how can I increase my social awareness? When I'm out and about, when I'm in big crowds, how can I be aware of my surroundings instead of just being, now again, do you want to be paranoid all the time? No, that's not what we're saying. But you do want to have a maybe a heightened sense just based on what's going on.
Yes.
And so for me, it's instead of being so head down, buried my head in the sand at an event that I have no awareness, it's being mindful of what other people, how are they acting? What's going on around me? Having a plan with my kids. Yeah. Hey guys, if something were to happen, where do you go? What do you do? Do you freak out, panic, take off screaming and running and in chaos? Or do you calmly move to the nearest exit, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. Now, again, does this have to be a conversation every place we go? Probably not. But my point is, you don't have to jump straight to level 10, which is buying a gun, learn how to use it. Yeah. You can be what's probably more likely for me, which is just increasing my awareness out in social settings.
Absolutely.
And having a plan for if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because the reality is I'm probably not going to go out buy a gun because of this series.
Yeah.
But I can't, there are things, if I'm not willing to make that step, there are things that I can still do. So I'm excited to have that conversation.
Yeah. And we're going to dig into having your home prepared. And that's not back to this whole deal, like building a bunker in it. It's like, do you have a swimming pool?
Yeah.
How are you prepared in worst case scenario if a child falls in?
Did you hear about the linebacker, NFL linebacker? Yeah. Did you know that guy?
I didn't know him well, but
what was his name again?
Yeah, Shaquille Barrett.
Yeah, if you don't know, there's a linebacker for Tampa Bay, Shaquille Barrett. Pretty good linebacker.
Yeah, great. You're really good.
One of the best in the league. And 4 kids, the youngest of which was 2 years old, little girl, fell in the pool over the weekend and ended up drowning.
Yeah.
So it's
we're actually going to have Granger Smith on in the near future. And he lost his 3-year-old to the same thing.
And it seems like it happens.
Their mission in life is to now mitigate, amongst a couple other things, but is to mitigate the occurrence of childhood drownings.
Yeah. And so it's, what do you do at your home to help prevent something? And that's certainly not to say that, to demonize anybody. No. That's just, how can we prepare our home?
Yeah.
Security system, right? What's a deterrent? How locking your doors at night. I grew up in a town where we'd leave our front door unlocked all the time.
Yeah.
We never locked our door.
Yep.
Never locked our cars. So it's not being paranoid, it's being aware.
Yeah.
There's a difference there.
Yep.
And so, again, that series, even self-protection, it seems like jiu-jitsu, all those type of skills, combat skills are becoming more valuable. It seems like.
Yeah.
Again, maybe that's just mainstream media scaring all of us. But even that, I'm like thinking, okay, do I need to go sign up for a BJJ class a couple nights a week? And
a what class?
You heard me.
Takes me back to old school. Have you ever Andy Dick where the girls? Have you seen Old School?
Come on. Come on. That movie was popular.
You've seen Old
2004?
School? No.
Dude, he's 12. Of course he hasn't seen it. He's 12.
Oh, the girls for like a wedding party, they take a class.
Okay. I vaguely remember this now.
And a guy comes in to teach it.
Andy Dick.
Andy Dick, and they're using bananas. You guys can use your imagination.
That's fantastic.
Sorry, my mind went there.
BJJ, 2 J's.
BJJ.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's what we're talking about. And being able to handle myself in hand-to-hand combat. The conversation we had with Chris, the captain for the Carrollton Fire Department. There was nothing he said in that episode, and you'll hear it here in a few weeks. There was nothing he said that was earth-shattering, mind-blowing information we've never heard before. But what it did was it punched me in the forehead of, I have no plan set in place.
Yeah.
I haven't had these conversations with my kids of what to do in a house fire. Mm-hmm. And how ridiculous is that as a parent to have no plan for that? Something that happens every 89 seconds, and I don't think it's important enough to talk to my family.
I shared on the episode, my next door neighbor, within 2 years of building his house was struck by lightning. Literally next door. The same house was struck by lightning twice. You don't think it can happen 2 years?
To you? It's happened to him twice.
It can happen. I mean, there's all these statistics about, the odds of getting struck by lightning, whatever. But here's the reality is, look, you can prepare for a lot of things and be a little bit prepared. The chances are is in each of our lifetimes, we will have at least 1 to 2 very, potentially disastrous events happen in our life. Whether it's a car accident, whether you come across a car accident. Okay, hey, do I know how to give CPR? Do I know, hey, how to break a window? Do I have the right tools in my car to break a window to be able to pull someone out? Do I have a fire extinguisher in my car? I mean, the odds are that you are going to encounter something like this. And if not, awesome. Awesome. But all you've done is be able to influence others so that they can be prepared as well.
In that realm, I teach my kids leadership and grit and determination and getting after it and working hard for what you want. I haven't even taught my 6-year-old how to dial 911 and what do you say?
Yeah.
How ridiculous is that?
It's pretty ridiculous, dude.
I'm failing my kid as his dad that I'm not even preparing him for, again, hopefully we don't need it. But if that the last thing you want is to be in a situation and be totally unprepared for it. I think of natural disasters. We had the ice storm a couple of years ago here.
Oh,
most of us
exposed.
Most of us were exposed in that.
Yeah. We had 2.
No running water.
Yeah.
No way to get to the grocery
power.
store for food. No power. And the majority of us, myself included, sitting there with a thumb up our butt, not having any clue what to do. No survival instinct whatsoever.
Can't drive. Don't have chains for your tires. Because when you drive a Corolla.
My life is totally reliant, Camry. My life is totally reliant 100% on the system in place, the food system, the power system.
Yeah.
Every system of modern society, my life has been accustomed to those things are just going to work for me.
100%.
And I have zero skills. That's embarrassing. It really is. It's pathetic how ill prepared I am. I wouldn't even know how to, if we went camping for 2 nights, I wouldn't even know how to survive a night out in the wilderness. Like it's that pathetic.
All you got to know is how to do BJJ.
I'll give BJJs to the person who can help me for this stuff. But the point is, I've become so reliant on the systems that are in place that I have no contingency plan if things go awry.
And you'll hear from a rancher here in Texas who runs like a sustainable beef, like Wagyu, and just talking about food production, right? Like our food system, through the pandemic, we learned logistics have been a huge struggle.
Yeah, if you didn't have access to meat and to protein sources,
you saw the beef prices through the roof.
Oh man!
For consumers.
And not only that, but you couldn't find anything on the shelves. So if you didn't have a local rancher, you didn't know how to source your own food. You were screwed.
Yeah, and it really is. But just talking about the importance of like somewhat being self-sustainable, like to a degree, right? And there's things that you can do is you can stockpile like non-perishable goods, and you can have that, but like that only lasts so long. You mentioned like, okay, well, what if it happens? What if like worst case scenario, and it's like we go just straight Walking Dead on it? Like, how are you going to get your own food? Like, do you know how to grow stuff? Do you know how to hunt things? Do you know how to, like, it's just stuff like that like, yeah, look, you'll never use ever, but like, dude, we grew up watching movies about plane crashes, right? It feels like it's been a while since we've had some of those, but like there are scenarios that have happened where people do have to survive for an extended amount of time. And are you prepared for that? If you get lost, are you prepared?
And again, I'm going to keep saying it. We'll probably say it a million times throughout the series. This isn't to freak people out. This isn't to become doomsday prepper. This is only to say, if an ice storm rolls through your city like it did for us and you're out for a week, what are you going to do? How are you going to provide for your kids for that week?
Yeah.
Being prepared.
Do you know how to create heat?
Right.
Like natural heat?
No. I'm sitting there with freaking paper towels trying to light paper towels
out of the stove.
It's pathetic. It really is pathetic.
Yeah.
If there's a house fire, have I had my kids, I mentioned this, my kids sleep upstairs.
Yeah.
Have I had a conversation? How do you get downstairs?
Yeah.
Maybe you have to go through the window. What are the scenarios that we need to talk our kids through if something happens? The last one, the financial.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody in finance and you're not just trying to peddle your services and sell something, hit us up, because we haven't secured anybody for that conversation, but that's one that I want to have, which is just proper, because it's, what's the 56% of Americans live paycheck, which again, I understand there's nuance to that, but the point is we spend more than we have.
Yeah.
We've told ourselves we need things that we don't to impress people that we don't really care about.
Yeah.
And so having that conversation of how are you taking care of your finances?
Yeah.
What are you doing? 39 39% of Americans have enough to cover $1,000 emergency. I mean, that financial illiteracy cripples you as a family.
Yeah.
You are failing your kids in a certain sense.
Yeah.
If you aren't taking it. Now, again, I understand there's a wide spectrum of people in your situation, but if you have a stable income, doesn't matter what that income is. There's millions of examples of people doing well off of low income.
Yeah.
Because they're smart about how they.
That's right.
And they're educating themselves and they're leading their families well.
Yeah.
So again, I'm speaking to myself in this series. I'm very excited about this series. Ultimately, though, it's all about application.
Yeah.
And we can have all the knowledge in the world, but unless you apply it, unless you take the uncomfortable steps towards mitigation here.
Yep.
And so my why, if you want to go back to that, is I think about my boys.
Yeah.
And how I'm leading them. And I want to make sure that I'm not only teaching them good life skills, but I'm also teaching, character, things like that. I'm also teaching them practical skills that they can apply and that can set them up. I don't know how to work on a car. I didn't know how to set a budget. Like, there were so many life skills that I don't have that I need to learn if I want to do my kids the best.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what this series is all about is, again, hopefully you don't need most of this stuff.
Yeah.
But being prepared in the unlikely scenario that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we are doing our absolute best to keep this light, to keep this positive, to keep this encouraging, because you can go very negative in this. But again, it's just talking through just real life scenarios that happen. And it's, okay, hey, how's your family going to react to it? Could be the difference in life or death. And so, again, not to dramatize it, make it any bigger than it really is, but like, there's things that we just overlook because we've lived so comfortably and things just have been taken care of for us. That, skills that we've just lost over the last 100 years.
Because we haven't had to.
No, we haven't.
And there's so many great things about that too, by the way.
Yes.
I would pick this time over any other time in history for sure.
Yeah.
But there's downsides, which it's made us reliant.
That's right.
And I'm the leader of that pack.
Right.
I'm very reliant, as I've said, on systems being in place. And if something breaks down, oh no, my day's inconvenience now.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Instead of having that victim mentality, how about be proactive?
Right.
And I'm talking to myself, how about I be proactive and take control of that scenario? Right. I can't plan for everything, but I can plan for a lot of things. So everything on this list I can certainly plan for. Yeah. And maybe, again, I don't go to the extremes of some of the things, but at least I have plans in place. Yeah. Of let's just think of 5 to 10 of your closest couple friends. Yeah. How many of them would you say have plans in place for each of these scenarios? Any of them?
It's maybe a couple of them. Mm-hmm. Just because I live in the country and people think that way.
That's true.
But yeah, not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of my friends have all of them planned and figured out.
Yeah. In a house fire situation, is there anything more important than getting your family out of that situation alive? Nothing.
Nothing.
So why don't we?
Yeah.
And again, I get it. You take care of the threats that are imminent today.
But again,
but if that's the most important thing in that scenario, why am I not planning for that scenario?
You never know. We share. I shared on the episode with Chris, the fire captain, and literally we went through a remodel and they opened up a wall and I had just exposed electrical wires, just literally just chilling up against insulation and drywall and wood, and the second not the guy that originally did the work was like, I don't know how your house is still standing. Like, you never know.
And looking at your house, me visiting I would never have expected that. Ever.
No.
Would never have expected that, just looking at your house. And so how many of us are living in homes where we wouldn't have expected that? Yeah. And yet what's lurking behind the...
That's right.
We had, what was his name? Matza? I forget the guy's name. We had Matza. Anyway, a couple of months back, we had a guy on, more of the fitness influencing realm, but he talked about a house fire at his house. His house was a little bit older. They had a fire in the fireplace, and it just got caught in the walls. His son, who he just happened to go check in on one night, his room was full of smoke, and his son was choking to death. Yeah. And if he hadn't have checked on him, his son wouldn't have survived. Do you think he was sitting there thinking that day, oh, my house, am I ready for a house fire? I don't know. No. And so you never know when this stuff's going to happen. And so
just making sure that you've thought through, talked through as many scenarios as possible. You can't prepare for everything. There's no way. But so that in the event of something like that is, okay, cool heads prevail. And you can think through it. Okay, we've practiced it. Now reaction is to do the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing.
Yeah, take it upon yourself to be a good leader.
Yep.
Take it upon yourself to lead your family well, lead your community. Think about, if you have these skills, if you're prepared in a way, how many people you can now help on top of that that aren't prepared in this way. Your next door neighbors, right? If something goes down, you're able to lend to help. You're more valuable in your neighborhood if you're able to.
Dude, just think about driving down the road. If you know how to change a tire, if you know how to give CPR, if you are somewhat familiar with rescue, you don't have to be a firefighter. You don't have to be military trained. You don't have to be all those things. But if you see a car accident, you can at least check on someone and help if needed until the ambulance or fire department gets there. Yep. You could really impact lives just by preparing yourself and your family for something. You can absolutely impact and affect other people.
That's right. So I'm excited about the series. I'm excited to learn and again apply, not just learn but apply.
Yeah,
and actually take steps to help my family out. And so I think this will be a fun series. Hopefully you guys enjoy it as well.
Yep.
Next week's episode, we're talking to Tyler. I wasn't there for that one.
PFX storm shelters.
Yeah,
and
we're going to talk about in Texas storms are huge, right?
Yeah.
Tornadoes.
We're coming into storm season in the spring. We've already had a handful come through. Talk about preparation. Yep. Is one thing that there's and I'll share videos and the process, and we'll share all that on our social media. But that is probably the single most important item I've ever invested in to give my family peace.
Well, as you said, it doubles as not only a storm shelter but a safety room.
Yep.
Somebody happened to make their way into your house. What do you do?
So we're at a conference this week, and if you're hearing this, I'm already back because this is airing for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm already back. But if I'm traveling and something happens, someone tries to break into the house, my whole family can go in there. Yeah. My wife.
Imagine if you didn't have that room. You have taken a step as the leader of your family, as the leader of your household, that your family is now going to be just fine if something goes down. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a storm, whether it's an intruder, you've taken that step. It was an investment. It wasn't comfortable, I'm sure. You don't like writing that check.
No.
But guess what? How much peace of mind you have now leaving your family because of that step that you took.
That's right.
So good on you for that. Yeah. We're excited for that episode and for you guys to check that out. So again, hopefully you enjoy the series. Hopefully you learn something. But again, more importantly, hopefully you apply it. Hopefully you take these steps to lead your community well. So.
And obviously we've shared, we're not the experts on these.
No, that's why we're bringing other people in.
We're bringing them in.
And seriously, if you're listening to this and you're a financial expert, again, you're not just trying to peddle your, whatever services you bring.
Yeah, because we'll cut you off mid-interview.
We're not trying to sell your company. We're trying to sell the information that you have and helping out everybody that's listening. So hit us up. I'm sure we can find somebody, but if that's you.
I've got someone.
Okay. Tyler's got somebody. But
so if you reach out quick.
Yeah. Send your resume. Send us 5 reasons why you should be on the One Shot podcast.
Yeah. And go ahead and wire a $1,500 deposit to account number.
That's right. All right, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your week, a great weekend, and enjoy this series. Apply this series, and we will see you next week.